there's more studies coming out, like in
Mm,
Journal of American Medicine, of how the AI with the doctor, because they're the clinician, they're the expert. That the danger is you get information from the AI and there can be hallucination, and it can tell you
mm.
to put glue on your pizza and that kind of stuff. So we need to make sure that there's a clinician in the loop that's monitoring and making sure that the recommendations you get are appropriate for your care. Here in the United States, we will spend for this year about $4.7 trillion on healthcare, and the next by 2031 we'll spend $7 trillion on healthcare if we don't change the ways we're doing things. The goal of the X Prize is that someone between 50 and 80 can become both their physical health, their cognitive health, or their immune system can be 10 to 20 years younger. And if they can do that, they get the grand prize is $89 million. dollars.
And today, we're diving into one of the most ambitious and urgent challenges of our time, in my opinion, which is using artificial intelligence to transform healthcare and potentially save 1 billion lives. Consider this: the United Nations project that over the next 20 years, around 1.5 billion people will die worldwide. That's roughly 75 million people each year. Now, imagine if we could harness AI to prevent even just a small fraction of these deaths. For example, if AI-driven breakthroughs in cardiovascular care alone could save 1.5 million lives annually, that would mark a significant leap in global health outcomes. And in our conversation today, we'll explore how AI is revolutionizing early disease detection, personalized medicine, drug discovery, and much more, while also addressing the risks, challenges, and other things along the way. So, joining us is someone who's not only deeply immersed in this mission, but is also committed to making a real impact himself. Doug Hohulin, who's the co-author of 2030, A Blueprint for Humanity's Exponential Leap, is on a mission to save 1 billion lives by driving transformative changes in healthcare. And without further ado, I'm thrilled to hand it over to Doug. Doug, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Yeah, so Doug, for those of us who don't know you, could you just give us a quick elevator pitch, how you got to this point, why you have the mission of 1 billion lives saved with AI? What's Doug all about? Tell us about it.
Okay, well, I was an engineer by training. I went to Purdue University. I worked at Motorola and Nokia for 33 years, working on communication, smart transportation projects, but also digital health projects. My customer for 22 years was the Sprint customer. I was in business development strategy, account management, and engineering. But during that journey, I looked at my dad was a history teacher, and I looked at this concept of a billion. So in 1802, there were a billion humans on the planet. In 2002, there were a billion cell phones on the planet. 2011, a billion smartphones on the planet. In 2022, there was 5 billion smartphones on the planet. Right now, there's about 5.6 billion smart people that you have a smartphone. So we have this concept of this billions. In fact, I have this blog that talks about these billions. So the question is how can we apply this concept of technology and use it for healthcare? So as you mentioned, like this year, according to the World United Nations, 63 million people will die. And over the next 20 years, it will go up to 86 million people will die. Just because our population is getting older, and as older population, they die more.
Mm,
And so the question is over these 20 years, there'll be 1.5 billion people dying. How many of those are avoidable deaths, right? And
right.
not only, a life expectancy, solving for death, but also solving for healthiness, healthy lifespan. And so that's what I've been thinking about, writing about. I wrote the book with Dr. Harvey Castro. He's an ER doctor focusing on healthcare as well, and AI. And so we wrote this book along with Alvin Smithson, 2030, A Blueprint for Humanity's Exponential Leap, to say, okay, how can we save a billion lives in this 21st century? And so that's kind of the mission I want to spend the next 10 years on. And what are the strategies around that? As from a system engineering perspective, this is my initial background. Here in the United States, we will spend this year about $4.7 trillion on healthcare. And the next, by 2031, we'll spend $7 trillion on healthcare if we don't change the ways we're doing things. So we need to have, I think, a radical way of looking at healthcare and wellness. And so that's what so I'm not only talking about healthcare, but wellness, well-being, and how to maximize individual health. So bottom line is, there's a top-down approach where I gave you all these statistics, but then there's a bottom-up approach, and it's like, what five, and this is what I would tell the audience, what five things individually can you do to maximize your healthy lifespan?
Mm.
So think about, your five things are different than my five things, different than, my mom who's 88's five things. But if you focus on five things and then have AI in the background, analyzing everything else and saying, once you solve those five things, it's like, okay, here's the next five things to solve
Mm.
and to work on. To again, at the goal is that we would have healthy lifespan. Here in the United States, it used to be 66 years is when the average person stops being healthy, our healthy lifespan. It went down because of COVID down to 63.9 years.
Mm.
So it should go up a little bit, but we're locking people down. When we lock people down, they don't get exercise. They weren't going to the doctor to get treated, and so their actually healthy lifespan went down, and not only in the United States but around the world.
Right.
And so we need to have a radical new thinking of wellness, well-being, and healthy lifespan by focusing on each of us the five things we can do to make a major impact to our health and the health of the people we love.
So is like you said, those five things, to me, that sounds it goes into the direction of personalized medicine recommendation almost,
Absolutely. Yeah,
right?
that's
Where
medicine 4.0 actually. There's five different there's medicine 1.0, which is traditional medicine.
mm,
Medicine 5 4.0 is personalized medicine.
is that kind of the lowest hanging fruit, you would say, where AI could help us all in healthcare or being healthy, or is there something else that you discovered?
Yeah, well, each of us have, like I have a friend who has chronic myelogenous leukemia, and she would have been dead if there wasn't a pill that was available for her. And
Right.
because of this pill called Gleevec, her life expectancy is exactly the same as someone her age, right? She's healthy, because of this pill. So, like, if you have diabetes, what you need to do to be healthy is different than what I needed to be healthy.
Right.
So there's different if you whatever your issue is, in your your lifestyle, where you're at in life. Those five things are different. If you're
Yeah,
in your 20s versus in your 50s versus in your
yeah.
80s.
Absolutely, and you may remember in the AI adopters think tank that we're running on our network. You and I we actually talked about ChatGPT's deep research, and we were playing around with it. I don't know if you heard of that one case study where somebody actually used that to analyze the cancer of his wife and then get some sort of almost like a personalized treatment recommendations based on it was much more comprehensive than the individual opinions that they got from the doctors because it could just kind of take a holistic approach. Do you see something like this happening more often in a more sophisticated way?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, there's more studies coming out, like in
Mm,
Journal of American Medicine, of how the AI with the doctor, because they're the clinician, they're the expert. That the danger is you get information from the AI and there can be hallucination, and it can tell you
mm,
to put glue on your pizza and that kind of stuff. So, we need to make sure that there's a clinician in the loop that's monitoring and making sure that the recommendations you get are appropriate for your care. But if the AI is helping the relationship with the doctor, so I have more medical literacy, so I understand what is the medications I'm taking, the blood results. Like my mom just had her blood results, and her calcium level was higher than normal, and so I
mm,
went into this tool that actually Dr. Harvey Castro had. And said, okay, what is the risk of having high, calcium? Because we were concerned about having low calcium. So we started giving mom calcium pills, but now her calcium's too high. And, this is the danger is sometimes, when you're having all these supplements and everything, you can actually do more harm than good. And so
mm,
there's this balance of, making sure that you're healthy as possible and then working with your clinician, your doctor, your nurse practitioner, to make sure that, you're following the treatment plan that's appropriate for you.
mm. And while writing your books, was there anything that you discovered during the process that kind of surprised you that you didn't think when you were going into that topic on healthcare and
Well,
AI and healthcare?
one is the number of people dying and
Mm,
going up, going from 63 million to 86 million in 20 years. I mean, that's shocking in my opinion. The healthy life expectancy went down in the United States from 66 down to 63 years. In fact, where I got that statistic is I was listening to a financial planner talking and saying, the average person isn't healthy after 66. So make
right.
sure you're living life to your fullest when you have when you have health, because you can have all the wealth you want. If you have no health, then all you're doing is sitting around doctor's office spending money on healthcare,
Yeah,
which is
I
not.
would think that life insurance statistics are probably pretty solid because whenever you have money on the line, that's when you do your thorough research, right? Um,
Exactly.
so what makes you most excited when it comes to AI and healthcare? Let's say by 2030, there's many different ways how it can have an impact from early detection to, like we said, personalized medicine to maybe speeding up drug recovery or even physically, like doing some operations. What gets you interested the most? Is there some like tier level that you would like to see?
Yeah, well, again, I think the bottom up. So each individual, what can they do today to be as
Mm,
healthy as possible? What can they do with their loved ones to be as healthy as possible? And so AI can be a guide to that, to encourage, saying, hey, yeah, let's take a walk. One of the things, in fact, you and I are both part of this group called Meadow, that is a social, that stimulates our minds. Actually, you can reduce your risk for dementia by 40 to 50% per the Lancet. 7% of your reduction in risk if you're using your mind and you're
mm,
stimulating your mind. So another one is socialization, that's 5 or 6%. So if you get into a group that stimulates your mind and has good social interaction, you're reducing your risk of dementia by 13%. And my guess is that doing these 40, these 14 things, is going to be more effective than an expensive pill.
mm,
So, medications, it has its value. Like Gleevec is a great example. So wonder drug, penicillin's a wonder drug. But diet and exercise. Now we know that. We know we shouldn't drink, smoke, or chew, or go out with people who do. But we like to do that, right?
right.
But how do we live as healthy as possible, given our human nature, where we like to do things that maybe sometimes adds risk to our lives?
I think it's kind of interesting that essentially we're doing a whole circle. We're closing the loop, so to say, where we're using high-end technology like AI in order to get back to the basics and f focus on the important things. But hey, whatever
Exactly.
works, right?
Yeah, though the danger is like there's
Yeah.
the social dilemma by Tristan Harris, that where you go into doom scrolling, where you're using AI not to get out to walk, you don't develop relationships.
Mm,
So in fact, I'm a big believer is if you're using AI and you're not developing human relationships but stuck in the AI relationship, you have artificial intimacy, and that's going to harm your health and well-being. And so we have to be, as human beings, to be social beings that interact with others. I mean, I'm an introvert, so it struggles. That's something I struggle with.
mm,
But I need to get out there and engage with people. And the challenges. I mean, the one problem with AI is it tells you what you want to hear. It,
mm.
it's empathetic. It's programmed to be empathetic, right? And it's just like engaging with a marketer. They're programmed to be, to get to sell you something, right?
Right.
But is that always the best for you? And
Yeah.
we need to deal with the human relationships that maximize our well-being.
Yeah. This morning I was sitting with my wife at the breakfast table and my son didn't want to really eat and she's Korean and we were talking about this Korean proverb and I'm probably gonna butcher it. It's something like if you love your kids, you're gonna spank them. If you don't like your kids, you're gonna give them sweets.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah,
I
spare
get
the
it.
child, spoil the child's, kind of thing.
Right, right. But let's talk a little bit more about the risks. You mentioned earlier hallucinations, right? And well, we all know that AI brings a ton of promise, uh, but there are risks, not only hallucinations, but also biases in data or unexpected failures of other sorts. How do you think can we somewhat try to make sure that we get the benefits of AI in healthcare specifically and avoid the negative potential risks so that we can really, gain from that?
Right. And that's critical thinking. We
Mm.
need to constantly train people who use AI to use critical thinking to realize these are AI tools that are trying to tell you what you want to hear. So, in fact, one of the dangers is to these AI tools is to kind of say, "Hey, give them some leading information," and they kind of just echo back what you're saying to them, right?
Mm.
So, when you're trying to do research, don't tell them what you think. Get them to tell you before you tell them
Mm.
what you're thinking. Also, then cite sources and go to the sources. Stephen Kotler has a great article on how he does research, and
Hmm.
he said he looks for five citation sources of experts, and he tried to find someone who's contrary to the other four,
Mm.
right? And so he looks at what experts are saying in the area, and especially an expert that's contrarian who's thought about this for 20 years. So at least you hear that thinking and say, okay, how should that reflect what I want to, how I have an opinion, how I use technology, how I make actionable information about my life.
Yeah, I can definitely emphasize with that. I actually have to look up that article that you mentioned. I recently started coding with AI, and I'm not a developer by any means, but I did create something, but it kind of does the spiral that you mentioned. If as soon as I want something to be changed, it kind of goes more and more into my direction rather than what's actually go good for the code base. And it just goes spirals out of control. So definitely good to have some sort of a framework or some sort of a path to get to real results. Um, Healthcare, obviously, besides the steps that we can do ourselves, it's always tied into the government to some degree. And, our government just changed and they're putting a big emphasis on AI. And I wonder if you, while writing the books or in general, if you have some thoughts on what the most practical steps would be that governments or even healthcare organizations can take to lead us to the promised land, right? To have better healthcare with AI, with those outcomes that you describe.
Yeah, there's this "Make America Healthy Again." I actually
Right.
like make the world healthy. And that's why this bottom up approach, how this message of healthiness.
Hmm.
Can we do that? I'm a big believer in having blind studies done to say, okay, is this treatment, is this recommendation safe and effective? The problem is there's this concept of number to treat, number to harm. So about 30% of prescriptions that are written, only 30% are really effective to that individual, especially around mental health medication.
Hmm.
So a lot of times you have to go through a lot of prescription drugs around that. So that can be a challenge. So, yeah, I think there's going to be more of a focus under this administration looking at, blind studies to say, okay, really, is this drug safe and effective? And going into the personalized medicine, is that safe and effective for me? Is it more likely to harm me or to help me,
Mm.
given my, different information? So, I think that's an area. I'm hoping that we can streamline, like one of the things that they were trying to do. We'll see if it happens. Like there's no surprises, right? So when you are going to have a blood test or you're going to have a procedure, ahead of time. Okay, that's in my network. It's I'm not going to get a $10,000 bill or $100,000 bill, for this treatment. There's that. I think mental health, that's a huge area.
Yeah.
and we'll see if the this administration has a focus on that. Of course, funding is always a challenge. The government's trying to cut funding, but at the same time, there's needs to help people, and so that's going to be something absolutely critical as well. So, we'll see where this goes with this administration. Can we make the world healthy? And we're doing it in some areas, and then in other areas we're falling apart. We're getting worse.
Mm.
And so the question is, how can AI help with this and not cause more harm than help, right? Just like
Yeah.
you have a new medication, some people are going to be helped, other people are going to be harmed. And making sure that when we're using these tools, we're using them that will help people, not harm them.
Yeah. I know we were talking about on another call on some of the technologies that have unintentionally killed the most people. Hopefully AI is not going to be one of them, but were there any interesting findings? Did you ever finish up that research?
Well, yeah, I worked in self driving in technology,
Yeah.
automated connected vehicle technology, and like when in the 20s when cars just first came out, like two-thirds of deaths in cities were due to the automobile.
Mm.
It was very dangerous, and then they started putting guardrails in place. I mean, putting like a yellow line down the center of the road reduced accidents, I think, by 80%.
Oh wow.
Because like, okay, keep on your side and keep on the other side.
Yeah.
So things that are, simple, it's like, okay, do these things. So, unfortunately, in the
So
last
you
10
could
years,
say that road paint saves lives to a
exactly.
degree, right? If you boil it down to
Right,
the
and that's a
core.
simple solution to
Yeah.
a problem.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, one of the problems it's between 2014 and in 2022, the number of deaths went up by 10,000 people on the road system,
Hmm.
and
Why is
from
that?
36,000. Well, people were distracted. There were a lot more
Ah.
pedestrians dying because they were drunk or they were distracted.
Mm.
Then you
Cell
have
phones.
yeah, cell phones. So,
Yes.
we're having this technology is supposed to make us safer, but it's actually causing harm.
So cell
Um,
phones gets that would be accounted for under cell phones, right? Unintentional deaths due to cell
well,
phones.
then they're speeding, there's, they're
Right, right,
driving
right. Not all
distracted.
of it,
And
but
actually, like my new vehicle, it has a big screen on it, and,
yeah.
like sometimes you have to go through two or three menus to turn on the wipers, right?
Yes.
It's in some cars.
I'm bad at this too, I have to say. I remember obviously radio days and all that, and then came audiobooks, and now it's like full on YouTube videos if I'm by myself. I mean, I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah.
Definitely not a good thing. Um, Hmm. Are you currently working on any projects that other than, publishing what you do, or do you see any projects that you're excited about to get to closer to like $1 billion saved with AI?
Well, the one I'm working on, so this Peter Diamandis has this longevity X Prize. It's
Hmm.
$101 million. There's 600, I think 40 teams that have signed up. They paid $500 to register. In March, they're going to pick 40 teams. Each team's going to get $250,000. I'm working with a couple potential teams to be involved in. And then also some startups here in Kansas City to look
Okay.
at how we can be part of that. So the goal of the X Prize is that someone between 50 and 80 can become both their physical health, their cognitive health, or their immune system can be 10 to 20 years younger. And if they can do that, they get the grand prize is $89 million. So
Okay.
there's different milestones. They're going to have, the 40, and then
Yeah.
they're going to go down to 10, where each 10 of the teams are going to get $1 million. And
Right.
then if you achieve that by I think 2030, you can get the 89 million. And
Interesting.
so we'll see if I get part of that.
Yeah.
There's over a billion people that have smartwatches right now. There's a
Hmm.
startup here in Kansas City called Guardian that is with a medical doctor to take real-time measurements of
Hmm.
information. So monitoring and then using AI. I don't need to know where my mom is all the time. I just need to know if she hasn't gotten up, or if she hasn't moved in the last 20 minutes, maybe.
Mm.
or if her oxygen levels going lower, so trigger things that when should you be aware of stuff. In fact, I was at a medical event, and this professor who's a runner said, okay, to his doctor, well, should I send you all this, daily update of this information? The doctor's like, don't send me that. He's just going to be overwhelmed. But what you may want to have as a physician, a clinician, is to have a dashboard that says, okay, here are let's say you have 2,000 patients, right?
Mm.
These patients are green, right? They're looking,
Right.
all their data looks really good. So you really don't even need to, maybe, every 3 years check on them. And then these are the yellow patients, and these are the ones that need to be, monitored a little bit closer. And then here are the red patients that, hey,
Mm.
these really need to be followed up with and make sure that they're, that need the most intervention. So I'm a big believer is if you have one size fit all, that's bad. If you do personalized medicine, and you have systems in place that focus, the triage system, right? Is like
Mm.
who needs to be helped, when, and could make a big difference. So there's some startups. I've actually invested in a couple companies. One is Open Water, which is looking at stroke detection. One of the number one causes of the number one cause of disability in the United States is stroke. And
Mm.
if you can get treatment within the first 2 to 4 hours of a stroke, your chance of recovering, a full recovery, is so much different than if you don't get that. And there's only about 1,000 stroke centers in the United States. So they're using LiDAR technology in the ambulance is what they're trying to have. So rather than having to have an MRI or a CAT scan at the hospital, while you're in the ambulance with the same technology as in your cell phone LiDAR equipment, it can determine if you have a bleed or a block of
Oh,
blood
wow.
flow in your brain, and then say, okay, are you having a stroke or are you having some other issue that doesn't need to go to a stroke center?
What's the
And
company called again?
Open Water.
Open Water. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
Interesting.
they're working on glioblastoma too. So I'll send you some information on what
Yeah, yeah, I would
they're
love to
doing,
see.
but I'm really interested on them. So that's more a very technical company. But then there's another company. It's called Love Life Science here in Kansas City. A medical doctor who just graduated from medical school. Rather than practicing medicine, he started his company. But the problem is all these injectables,
Mm.
not only GLP-1 drugs, but other drugs require self-injection. And like 50% of people doing self-injections are doing it wrong. And so there's causes CDC taking too much drug, not enough drug.
Mm.
And so, I mean, the 3 million people who die every year, according to the World Health Organization, die from unsafe care. 50% of that is due to medication errors. And, is it the clinician writing the prescription, or is it the patient, especially injections, because that's always a really difficult thing.
Mm.
Is that the problem? And so they came up with a very simple solution to be much more accurate, a cost-effective accuracy for self-injection. So, that's another company, so it's kind of, I'm a big believer, you solve this problem small steps at a time.
Right.
Um, though there's times like Gleevec is a good example. It came along, it took 20 years to develop, but when it came along, it was revolutionized the care of chronic myelogenous leukemia. And you went from you're going to be dead in 5 years to you have a normal life expectancy
Mm.
and health
Gotcha.
expectancy with that drug. So, that's, is top down, solve the big problems, but also work on personalized medicine to solve your individual problem. And I think that's where AI can really make a difference.
I love that. And it also gives you something to do. You don't just have to wait, right? That you can kind of experiment with some of those tools or even just think about taking your health into your own hands now that you at least have a little bit of a guide. Obviously, watch out if you have some sort of like condition, always you should consider talking to your doctor. But I think, I even heard of this one story I shared a couple months ago where this developer, he was coding at night, as developers do, and it was a Reddit post, so take it with a grain of salt. But he had some chest tightness or something like that, and he first kind of brushed it off, but then out of just curiosity, he just put in his symptoms into ChatGPT, and instead of just actually, giving him some, I don't know, some message that he would have disregarded, the system started asking him more questions, which then led him to take this a little bit more serious. And then he went to the ER, and the doctors told him, "Hey, if you would have come here an hour later, we would have had a very different conversation." So
Wow.
maybe even indirectly, it helped this guy with a heart attack. So yeah, Doug, if people want to get in touch with you and connect with you, how can they reach you in the easiest way
Yeah,
possible?
yeah, I write a lot articles on LinkedIn. So I'm the only myself and my cousin are on LinkedIn, Doug Hohulin. So second cousin. So yeah, Hohulin, and I'm Doug at LinkedIn, and see me on my articles. Happy to connect, and working together to make the world healthy. If you're join me on
Well,
that
you got to
journey and
start
make
somewhere.
yeah, and yourself
Right.
healthy, right? Not only the world, it's just the top-down approach, but the bottom up is make yourself and the people you love healthy as well.
I love that, Doug. I'll link your profile in the description below. Thank you so much, man. That was fun. And I'm also really excited about the future with healthcare because that has a real impact. Everybody's just talking about videos and image generation and AI. I want to see real impact. And I think this is something important that you're interested in and working on. So
Well,
thank
thank
you
you so
again.
much.
See you around. Bye bye.
Bye.